G'day and welcome. You are listening to the Online Prosperity Show. My name's Jason. I'm an author, a publisher, and an aviator. And today I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming you all and talking to you about aviation, how that works with synergy into publishing, and what you should do with your story and why you should share it with the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, the #1 place to find exclusive insights, solutions, and stories from the people that are solving the problems you could be facing right now in business and in life. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and I'm really excited about today's guest. Because he once dreamt of being in the sky as an aviator, but instead he found himself helping others taking their dreams to flight through storytelling. Now, Jason, how are you doing, my man?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me, Prosper. And you didn't tell me I needed to practice my my presenter's voice because you did such a good job of that presentation. Thank you.
Well, this is me working, right? You know, for you, you're just coming to tell your story like the very way that you help other people tell their stories. So it doesn't matter. As long as we can hear you and you're clear enough, that's all that matters on the Online Prosperity Show. Now, for those that are watching right now, from fast jets to fantasy novels, Jason Leigh Smith has actually built a career as both an award-winning author and also the head of independent publishing house Clark and Mackay. And we're going to be going through the journey of how that came to be and why actually, you know, leaning into your story could be the very thing that your business needs or you would need for your life. So this episode isn't just about books. You might be thinking, I'm not here to hear about books and things about that. No, it's about resilience, creativity, and how the right story can actually help you rewrite your life. And I can't wait to jump in. And for those that can see, you can see I'm an avid reader and I love any story that starts with, so I read this book. Now, Jason, thank you so much. Now, tell us a little bit about, you know, your start. You actually wanted to be an aviator. What does that mean? And what were you supposed to be doing?
Yes. So again, thanks for having me. Really quite excited to be here and have this chat. For as long as I could remember from, you know, being a wee little lad, all I wanted to do was fly, be a pilot. I did study aviation at university. I went to an academy, learned to fly. So I've got all my tickets, supposedly know what I should be doing in the cockpit of an aircraft. Aviation is very, very demanding. It's very particular, you know, a lot of mathematics and very using the side of our brain that's all logic. And so I found the other part of my brain that tended to sort of follow was the creativity side. So I'd always been writing books as well. There's this sort of duology between wanting to fly aircraft and writing books. And yeah, I guess I still have all those tickets. Aviation is still something that's very close to my heart, and I'm looking forward to bringing it back more into my career. But I did, as you said, took a bit of a sidestep into the world of writing and publishing.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, so many of us start off somewhere wanting to, you know, be a certain profession, or maybe some people want to be a firefighter or policeman or things of that nature. What was the inspiration regarding flying?
I couldn't tell you. I mean, I don't remember a particular, you know, rainy Tuesday when I was 3 years old where something happened. It was just that it was always what I wanted to do and wanted to be. Even now I have I haven't flown in a couple of years, but I still have that urge to get back into the sky, get back in the cockpit. I think some people just are born with something, and I think for me, aviation is part of that. Yeah, it's always there, always waiting.
So, I mean, obviously, you're absolutely right about the side of the brain that needs to be used, especially when it comes to aviation. Aviation is very
Yep.
left brain, like you say. Like, I've heard that if you miss, if the airplane is pointing 1 degree out, by the time it reaches its destination, it's already in a whole different, place. So I can only imagine that, even autopilot can't correct that. So yeah, it would have been.
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
and you're exactly right. We do things where you have sort of rules where you can use rule of thumbs, or you have complex calculations that can help you figure that out. Because yes, where you point the aircraft and you don't necessarily just hope, but if you're pointing the aircraft and 60 minutes down the track, you've pointed it in the wrong direction, you can be in a really, really different place than where you wanted. So it involves a lot of thinking, a lot of sort of quick maths, which is very different to writing a book, very different.
See, there's no set and forget. I mean, once you've written a book, that's it. It goes to the publishers. You don't have to worry about that. And I can only imagine I can hardly use the GPS on my car and arrive at destinations in the right place. I usually take a circle around. So you can only imagine if you're supposed to be flying and you literally have to, nose in, land, and then let people off and stuff. But you've obviously been flying recreationally, or do you sometimes just take a flight for spin or things of that nature?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as said, I did all of my licenses through university and the academy where I learned to fly. And while I didn't pursue a career in aviation at the time, it's still something I want to come back to. But I do fly recreationally. So they're just like you can hire a car or a jet ski. So this sort of baffles some people, but you can hire aircraft as well. So we every once in a while just go and hire a plane and go for a fly around. Southeast Queensland is beautiful at all times of the year. So yes, it's something we try and do reasonably frequently. But I'll be honest, I haven't flown in the last year or two.
Absolutely. Now, looking back, was there a specific moment where you were sitting in the cockpit and then you were like, this isn't my runway, and you just thought publishing was the right path that you wanted to take?
I think, great analogy, by the way. I think, look, I definitely had a moment. I was receiving my wings, going up on stage and getting our wings at the end of the academy training. And I was listening to all my mates who we'd, flown together for the last few years talk about how they wanted to pursue careers in the airlines. And I really couldn't think of anything more boring in terms of watching the aircraft fly itself, particularly on those long haul flights. Some of them are 10 plus hours. And so it was definitely a bit of I didn't know what I wanted to do with the career, which sounds really dumb, right? Because it's kind of like a dog chasing a ball. Like I just chased it my whole life, got to that point, and then didn't know what to do with it when I actually got it. I at the time had been finishing my first book, and it kind of was just all timing. I sort of sent it through to a publisher at the same time that I'd finished my flight training, and I sort of fell into the world of publishing at that point, and I've been in publishing since then, which has been sort of about 8 or 9 years.
You see, a lot of people would, and liken flying to freedom. You know what I mean? You would have been out there doing your thing, but you chose entrepreneurship. And also entrepreneurship, they say it's akin to flying a plane and then jumping out of that plane and figuring out your parachute. So would that have been what you actually did in this particular scenario? Because,
I think it is looking back, it is really strange. I submitted it to a small local publishing. This was my first manuscript. I submitted to a small local publisher. We got talking. They were quite a bit smaller than I thought they were. I actually had a bit of background in small business at the time, and I actually got on really, really well with that publisher, and I started doing some consulting work for them. Yeah, it wasn't like I sort of made a decision that was it. I was leaving aviation. It just was kind of like these little breadcrumbs left along the way that, I just sort of took one and then took another and then took another. And then next thing I was in a partnership in that particular business, and that went on to be a very successful business. And, then I took another few crumbs and another few crumbs, and now here I am at the head of my own house. So I don't know, Prosper, it's really strange. It's not like I, woke up one day and decided that it wasn't what I wanted to do. It was just the way that life sort of led me down, took my hand and took me on a little journey.
So you said you were already involved in business. What sort of business was that? Did you say your parents were already involved in business?
No, well, my parents had been involved in their own business from as long as I can remember, and I had always said to them I would never go into business because I could see how hard they worked. And then here I am in business, all these years later. But when I was at university studying aviation, a friend was doing commercial cleaning of a night time. So they were cleaning offices, office buildings, those sorts of things. And they kept harping on about how good it was because they could study during the day and then go and clean office buildings of a night time. And so I got involved in that. And together, the pair of us, we built a little cleaning business while we were at university. So that was sort of my first taste of business, was that commercial cleaning business. Was very, very, there was a lot of freedom in that business. We sort of walked around office buildings by ourselves at night cleaning.
So did your parents at least guide you into business, or did they just let you be as you were starting out?
Yeah, mum and dad are great. They've been the best role models for everything through my life. They're really good at handing, I don't know if you know this analogy, but handing me just enough rope to sort of see if I'll hang myself or swing across the gap. And no, they always have been like this. They sort of weren't pushing me or not pushing me towards working for myself at all. It was just sort of what they had done their whole life. They were sort of they've always been really supportive of whatever I wanted to do.
Now, when you entered the publishing world, I mean, obviously, when you first step in, it's a whole different world altogether. And I don't think they were using typewriters by then. The technology had been updated a little bit. But what's something that a lot of us don't know about this industry that also surprised you as you entered it?
I think when I first entered the industry, I had one of the senior editors at the time tell me that I needed to make a decision in publishing whether I was producing something for creativity or I was producing something to sell. And at the time, that really rubbed me the wrong way. I was a fair bit younger and probably had grand ideas about what could actually be done in the industry. And I sort of disagreed. I said, absolutely not. We can create something that's both creative and for the masses. Over the years, I've come to realize that particular editor was absolutely correct. I've seen it time and time again. We either create something for the purpose of creativity, that sort of unshackled release of our intelligence in a way that is both fun and just creating for the sake of creating, or we can produce something that is produced for the purpose of being sold. And Yes, it's taken me a long time to sort of figure that out, but they're very different things, very, very different things.
So you've been on both sides of the coin. You know, you've been an author yourself and now a publisher. How has being, first of all, on both sides, especially being an author, changed the way you actually now serve other writers that you publish?
It has a huge impact. The process of writing a book and publishing a book and then releasing and marketing a book to the world it's actually really quite intimate. You, as an author, put all of your heart and soul into this thing that then becomes its own entity. It's not sort of part of you anymore. It's something that you created. It's almost like a child, right? You created this thing and then you just sort of hand it out into the world. So it's very, very intimate. There's a lot of people put a lot of themselves into their work, a lot of things they might be too scared to talk to people about, but they can put it into their characters. And so there is a whole journey that authors go through, this almost grieving process of releasing their work into the world. And the trepidation and the excitement, wanting to get it out there, but quite anxious of how the world is going to react and see the work, because again, you're so tied to it. I think it's really changed how I interact with authors, because I know I've been there, I've done it. I understand what those ups and downs are like. I know what the journey's like. I know what the trepidation feels like when you hand it out and you're on launch day and you're just waiting for the reviews to come back. Will they love it? Will they hate it? I think it makes a huge difference to be able to understand the psychology behind the author going through that journey.
Absolutely. I think there's that whole thing about once I've written it, I can't take it back. You know what I mean? Like you can't go and tweet something or delete a WhatsApp message, even though there's still that little streak that says this person has said something, but they deleted it. You can't undo that with a book. Now, with what you're saying, you live by the statement, write the stories you want to read. What does that actually mean, especially for somebody who's an author? And are there any sort of stories that you desperately needed to read in your own life to guide you on your journey?
Those words are really important for two different reasons. There's sort of the nonfiction side, which in publishing speak is something that is real. So in nonfiction might be, autobiographical, so someone telling their story, or it might be a reference material like a how-to. And then there's the fiction side, which is, fantasy and crime and thrillers and dragons and all those sorts of things. But the point is really important for both of them. In the nonfiction space, I often find that an author who's writing an autobiographical piece, what they're doing is actually writing to the younger version of themselves to help that younger version of themselves deal with that trauma that they're going through at a time, because a lot of autobiographies have trauma in them, a lot of lives, we experience life every day. There's a lot of trauma in our lives. And so it's being that character, that sort of grown up for that younger version of you, helping them through that journey, showing them what you can do better, what you can learn from, is really, really quite poignant and what we see in a lot of autobiographies. Similar but dissimilar in fiction, people tend to go to fiction for escapism. So in nonfiction, you tend to go to nonfiction to learn, to grow and be better. In fiction, we tend to go to it as a form of escaping our world. And so in fiction, what we find is, although we're trying to escape the world, we're also trying to see characters, relatable characters, as people and humans or otherwise that we relate to, that we see characteristics and traits in them that we want to embody or embellish. So to drive that home a bit more, I, as a young man, found that a lot of the sort of characters I was reading in the fiction, because I'm a huge fiction reader, I was reading at the time, didn't really represent what I wanted to see in the world. Again, it sort of comes back to that creativity versus what sells, and at the time that wasn't sort of what I wanted, wasn't the thing that was going to be sold. And It was actually my father who said to me, if you don't have the characters that you want to read, then just write them yourself. And that was sort of the genesis of the first book that I wrote. So I probably have him to blame, to be honest, for putting me on the pathway.
You see, I like that creativity versus what sells, because that aspect actually applies to just about everything else. I mean, you could go on and write, creative, colorful stuff. But if that's not what sells, then you're only just wasting not only your time, but the time of the readers. Is that the reason why so many people now start having series and more versions of books, just because the one particular book sold and now they have like different versions of it and upgrades and things of that nature? Is it because of that sort of
Yeah, what we see, particularly like in the series, is that the world that we live in at the moment, right? So we think about platforms like Netflix and Disney, all of this sort of streaming content services, whether we've pushed it that way or we've been trained, we like to consume things in a sort of a binge state, really, but we like to sort of watch them from beginning to end. So a lot of the serial book authors, particularly in the fiction space, this is the same reason. What they're doing is actually releasing work that is to the type of story that they know is going to sell, and they're doing it in a series. So they pick up X number of readers in book one who will then continue with them through 2, 3, 4, it might be up to 12 books. So it really comes down to that same sort of reaction we see to the streaming services, where people are just sort of watching what they like, and then they find other stuff that's like the same thing, maybe just a little bit different, same tropes, we would call it in publishing, which is the same sort of elements, the same parts or spinning parts that make up the bigger story. You go and find other stories that have the same tropes. We go and find other TV shows that have the same, a lot of people who like crime TV shows will watch things like crime scene investigation and all the different versions of that.
Like what they would say other people have watched, or other people similar to you have viewed this, because people like us do things like this. Now, as a publisher, have you had to turn back somebody saying, nah, come on, man, this is, it's all in your story, but I don't think this is going to sell?
Absolutely. That's probably the harshest part of the job, working in publishing. We definitely don't word it like that. The way we tend to approach it is by saying, hey, you've done a really good job getting it to this point. We think you need to do X, Y, Z to get it to the next point, to get it to the market. And sometimes that what we're suggesting might be a complete overhaul, simply because what somebody is looking to release in terms of their work, their book, it might not actually be what the market is looking for again. So as you've said, Prosper, that comes down to that creativity versus what's actually selling at the time.
And as a publisher, you must obviously see, some sort of really deeply personal stories of, people that are just coming to publish a book. Is there any story that stuck with you? I mean, obviously you don't have to mention names or things of that nature, but is there a story that really, really left a lasting mark on you?
On the whole, I find publishing a very humbling space to work in. We do see so many stories triumph over tribulations, triumph over trauma. And I often find myself leaving the office at the end of the day thinking, I thought I was having a bad day, but really in the grand scheme of things, I have no idea, because, what these people have gone through is completely different. I don't know if I have one particular story that's sort of stuck with me, but I've definitely got quite a number that have really traveled with me throughout the years, and a lot of them are these same sort of triumph over tribulation. So, for example, I have a 50-year-old woman who, mother, successful business owner, was putting up the blinds on her window and slipped Her leg sort of fell into her bed and she fell outwards, snapped a leg, woke up in hospital as an amputee, and had a horrific journey of learning how to walk again with different prosthetics. I've had a woman who was an ultra marathon runner who pushed herself and trained. And so I don't know if you know what an ultra marathon runner is, but an ultra is essentially anything longer than 42 kilometers. Running 42 Ks in itself is
Goggins type
is
marathons.
Yeah, we're talking, like 100 kilometers or 350 odd Ks over the Himalayas or something, I think was one of the races, like just crazy stuff. Actually, that runner gave herself really severe damage internally to her organs and to her brain because of the training she was putting herself through. She knew it at the time, but she just kept pushing. That always sort of stuck with me, like just the getting into the mind, like, why would you do that? I've also more recently worked with a man who suffered some very horrific trauma as a child. So we're talking like 6 months, again, it's sort of like 6 years and then 10 years. It seemed that the trauma didn't affect him until he sort of got into his adult life, and then had quite serious mental health challenges, such that he is fighting his own mental health to stay alive every single day. That really, when I'm having a bad day or when I think I'm having a bad day, think about these sort of people and gain that perspective and sort of reconsider, actually, my day is not that bad. Wow. And then potentially the one I'm working on at the moment, which will be the last, I think the last example I'll give you is a lady who in her early 30s, diagnosed with breast cancer, double mastectomy, lost her breasts, was in remission. Her husband, who had supported her through the whole process, they had a couple of young kids. He then had kidney cancer. So they went through that journey with him. And when they came out in remission, she found out she had leukemia. And then through the process of leukemia, had, a stroke and a couple of heart attacks. And I mean, and this is all before her and her husband were 45. And I think getting into the minds of those people and understanding why they keep going and what it is that they're, I don't want to sound bleak, but what it is that they're wanting to achieve in their lives and why they keep going, why do they keep coming back for more? That's probably the biggest thing that I find so humbling and rewarding as well about working in publishing.
Absolutely. And there I almost canceled this recording today because I lost an eyelash and I just couldn't face myself, going on camera with an eyelash missing. So now that you've told me that, it's actually brought a lot more perspective that there are people that are going through stuff. And kudos to you for the kind of work that you do and bringing those kind of stories out there, because otherwise, how else were people going to know? So this is the book side of things. What else do you guys do at Clark and Mackay?
So, by the way, Prosper, you're still beautiful even without that eyelash. So, there's no need to worry about that. In terms of Clark and Mackay, we look, really cool business history. The business was actually founded in 1928. So we're coming up on 100 years old. The business was founded as a print business originally. So the two founding families, which are the Clarks and the Mackays, they ran the business. Actually, it was predominantly the Mackays that ran the business. Excuse me. They ran it through the all the way through the last century. They were quite aggressive in their business model. They actually ate up a lot of their competition. And as you said it earlier in the call, the print industry used to be full of massive machines with huge crews. They'd run 2 or 3 shifts a day to keep these things running. And then as times changed, we saw more smaller printing presses run electrically come in. So the business actually downsized quite a lot in the turn of the century. And around the same time as when we saw self-publishing's always been around for for a long time, but it really came to its stride around the turn of the century, and so that's when Clark and Mackay started doing the self-publishing side. So now what we have in this awesome little business is half of the business does commercial printing, so anything that you can think of that's printed, flyers, business cards, pull-up banners, signage for buildings, print like clothing and dye sublimation, anything that you can think of that's printed, we can do it. And the other side of the business is the publishing side. So, working with authors to get their books to market, producing them as well. So we do a lot of book production here in our factory, and that could be anything from your sort of standard run-of-the-mill mass market paperbacks all the way through to your high-end limited edition, lots of bling, lots of foils and shiny bits as well. So it's a very sort of dynamic little team that we've got here in Clark and Mackay.
Absolutely. Now, while you're going through all of that, that's a lot of responsibility, going into a business that has such a tremendous heritage. And as we were talking about, if you just fly it 1 degree away from where it's supposed to be, it could actually land in a whole different destination. Does that not scare you that you have all this heritage, 100 years in a business, and if you make the slight mistake, you might actually just run it to the ground?
Yes, is the easy answer. Particularly, when I was purchasing the business, I felt that weight. The Mackay family ran the business. They actually had 5 generations of their family in this business at one point, and I was the first ring-in. Essentially, I was the first non-family member to join the top of the business since it started in 1928. So yeah, there was huge imposter syndrome. Absolutely. The family were great. They weren't the ones putting that on me. They, from their perspective, and I think this is sort of where I've come to now, or at least getting towards, is that they, as a family, had operated the business successfully for those, it was about 96 years or something. And they were really proud. They'd come to the sort of end where they knew that they needed fresh ideas and they needed a fresh direction for the business. One of the sort of closing conversations I had with the Mackays, who previously owned the business, was that, like a lot of the big brands in the world, let's say Ford, for example, Ford's been around for a long time, and the mentality in that business is that it's going to still be around in a long time. And so while what every person in that business does matters today, it also matters that in another 100 years that business is still operating and still sort of working. And so that was sort of what the Mackays were handing over to me, was when they said, we want you to take this business to the next step. It was, we've sort of done what we can. It's now time for fresh blood. So yeah, there was a lot of imposter syndrome at the beginning, that's for sure. I think now, we're about 5 years down the track. We haven't gone bankrupt. We're still here. We're still operating. We're doing lots of exciting things. So, I can't be doing something that terribly wrong, can I?
Well, absolutely. And obviously, now that this is now an heirloom, are you also going to pass it down, or are you going to sell this business?
Oh, look, this is such an interesting question. If you talk to my business coach, they would tell you to never be emotionally involved with the business, because it changes how you think about things. I am emotionally involved in this business. I think the story, where it's come from, what it's done over the years, and where we're going is very romantic. I work in publishing. I love stories. I love legacies, that sort of thing. So I don't want to say never, Prosper. I don't want to tell you, no, I'm never going to sell the business. I do think, however, that if the right price or if the right time, you never know, like those little breadcrumbs I was telling you about, I never know what's going to happen next, but I would like to be involved in some way, shape or fashion in this industry, because I do find it a very interesting industry to work in. So whether that's with Clark and Mackay in the future or not, I don't know. But yes, I've done a very political way of not answering your question, haven't I?
No, that's all right. I mean, obviously, nobody knows what's in store, But at the end of the day, I mean, I do really value the heritage and what you have done with the business in and of itself, and the fact that you are aware of the gravity of what you have, because if something has been around for like 100 years or so, you want to just obviously preserve that and not just, run it to the ground and things of that nature. So if somebody is maybe looking to be an author and they are looking to maybe work with you and things of that nature, what will be the first thing you encourage them to do, and how can they get a hold of you?
I would say to any author out there to just touch base with us. The publishing industry is a very old industry. There's also a lot of information that in my opinion, doesn't sort of come out of the industry. So there's a lot of, it's almost like a black hole, a lot of things go in and not a lot comes out. So we run free publishing discovery calls. We also run free seminars from time to time about the publishing industry. The reason we do this is because it's important for authors to understand the industry and understand what their role in the industry is, as well as the pathways that they want to follow, because there are a couple of different ways to publish a book. They're all very different. The sort of process and the outcome is different as well. So my biggest advice to any author out there is just reach out. We've got free sessions you can plug in and have a chat to myself or one of the team. And whether, our role might only be pointing you in the right direction. It might not even be us. We might not even be the best publishers for you. It's just really good to sort of have that grounding and to point you in the right direction before you sort of set out on your journey.
Right. So, and where on the internet can they go to find out information about how to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so clark-mackay.com.au is our website. If you go straight on the main page there, you'll see there's a submission form. If you do want to send your manuscript through, we can have a look. Or if you go through to the contact form page, it'll actually take you through to, which is the top right on the page when you're looking at it, it'll take you through to the chance to book a time with me or one of the team as well. I highly recommend it. Even if you're not sure, even if you're just sort of wanting to test the waters, so to speak, reach out and see how we can help.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes below. Now, Jason, while we were talking, I was just thinking of something. My kids, when they go to their school, there's a big van that comes and it's full of books. It's like a moving library. And I was just thinking, you're a pilot. You could just buy one of those decommissioned airplanes and turn it into a flying library. I mean, if you're looking for partners to do that, I'll just sit in the back and read books and, What do you think of that library? Idea?
Yeah, I love that idea. If we can do something altruistic with it and fly those books to parts of the world where they, need help in their education and literature, I am all down for that. I think that's a great idea.
Oh, wow. I didn't think of it that way. I was just thinking in the outback, and just figure out life in there as well. But I think, there's so many, because books are a useful tool for conveying information and knowledge, and not only for entertainment purposes, but books were the original internet, really, the first search engine, like the encyclopedia and stuff like that. People would literally get all their knowledge from that. So I can only see in places where they're deprived would be actually a good thing to set up there. Now, obviously, you've brought us into your world, and now we are wanting to cheer you on and see this company go for the next 100 years. What's next? What are you working on that we can be excited about at Clark and Mackay?
So I think I really like what you just said, Prosper, and I'll segue into your question by saying that what I really love about stories is that stories have really been on the forefront. This is obviously my opinion, so you can take it or leave it. Have been on the forefront of evolution from as long as we can remember. Thinking back to cavemen drawing on the inside of their caves about the saber-toothed tiger. Don't go near this beast because it's going to tear you to pieces, or don't eat this berry because it's poisonous, or this is how we harvest the maize or the corn. So stories, the ability to pass down knowledge and information really is part of the human race's ability to evolve and learn and grow. So stories, to me, for that very reason, are so important for us to be able to pass on, like parents to their children, or, writing a story and sharing your ability to triumph over a really tricky, troubling, and traumatic situation is enabling somebody else to live a better life. So it's really important that we continue this to share stories in whatever fashion that be. It just happens to be that books is sort of the medium that's stuck around for such a long time. So to that end, as we sort of look to the future, Clark and Mackay is really knuckling down on the book publishing side of the business. We have really seen huge growth numbers in that side of our business, and it's also what we're really passionate about as well, which is great. It's something we're passionate about, and that's what it seems the market is passionate about too. So, it's just, this sort of builds this little synergy thing. We've knuckled down on the publishing side, so we sit quite broadly over the industry. We've really been working to develop the services and support we provide to self and independently published authors. So for those listening out there that don't know what that means, that is authors who aren't aligned with a house, so they're sort of doing it themselves. So we have the ability to help them. And we're also focusing on building our own networks and distribution outlets for the books that we are publishing, so we can, spread the word as far and wide as possible on those amazing stories that we want to share.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us on that journey, because I think, as you said, books are the oldest, tool for conveying information, from the hieroglyphics to the Gutenberg press. And even now, with artificial intelligence, the first thing that they attempt to do is write books, even though they've got that particular AI. So you can only imagine, it's a store of information, just like money is a store of value. So I can't thank you enough for the time that you spent with me on the call today, Jason. And thank you so much, because you've really shown us that stories aren't just entertainment. They're actually engines of change. So, and now that you've got a big story to handle at Clark and Mackay, I can't wait to see this unfold.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for having me today. It's been great having a chat and sharing a little bit what I think about stories and their importance in our world.
Absolutely. And for those that are watching right now, if you're just thinking, I've got a story in me, but you don't know where to start, I think today's episode should actually be that wake up call. And don't let your story go untold, because as Jason has actually proved, stories can actually change people, and it's people that then go out there and change the world. So make sure you check out what Jason is doing at Clark and Mackay, and see if they can bring your stories to life. Before you know it, you'll probably be fighting for space in my library there, or you'll be fighting for space in the the flying library that me and Jason are going to be cooking up in the future. So be sure to write it, otherwise you won't be added to that. And before you obviously get too excited, make sure you're subscribed to the Online Prosperity Show so you don't miss out on any of these exciting episodes. And I can't wait to see what you're going to do with this information. Bye for now.